Hello, this is Dr. Victoria Skirbo, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. So today I want to look at the chart of Pope Francis I. Pope Francis became Pope in 2013 after the last Pope, Pope Benedict, resigned his office. I believe, and I could be mistaken, but the reason that he resigned was he did not feel like he could do the job. He was elderly, of course. All popes are elderly. They seem to get them in there pretty late in their life. And so I think the primary reason Benedict could not continue was the sexual abuse scandal that's, of course, blowing up for the Catholic Church and has been blowing up since the 90s. That occurred back when Pluto, the planet of transformation and sort of, pulling out all the pus from the wound, went into Sagittarius, which is the sign of religion. So now it's in Capricorn, and so Pluto does, goes into the structures and the patriarchal structures. And these institutions that need to be refurbished or redone, or where we have the energy of breaking down and then rebuilding. And so this Pope has the same problems as the last Pope. Those problems didn't go away. We're talking about hundreds of years perhaps of pedophilia, and then thousand years of, I'm not really sure exact years, of the whole structure of the church that is being reviewed. So I thought we would look at Pope Francis. We just recently in the United States had in the state of Pennsylvania, there was a case where they found thousands of victims over 30-year period in the area of Pittsburgh, that diocese. I think it was the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and that's just one little section of one little state in one country. I mean, this is, there's billions of Catholics out there, and certainly it's a big institution. But as the head of the Catholic Church, we can sort of look at Pope Francis and sort of see how the pressures within or on the Catholic Church. And I want to look at him first personally, and then we can look at the aspects and the things that are going on to his chart that can show us what the pressures are upon the church itself. I don't think we have a birth chart for the church, although there might be a birth chart for the church. I haven't done my research on that. If I can find that, I will take a look at it and see maybe at a later time how that's affected. So what I want to do is I would like to look at this chart through the lens of evolutionary astrology. And so whenever we look at evolutionary astrology, we always look to Pluto first. So this is just his chart with his house, the degrees of his houses. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but he has an intercepted chart. I use Porphyry, okay, the house system Porphyry, and in that case he has intercepted in his 9th and 3rd house, interestingly enough, Aries and Libra. So let's look at, he has a Cancer ascendant, and I think we can sort of see that in his persona. He has a very at least from my interpretation, I'm sure people have opinions, but he seems to have a gentle demeanor and a softness and a not particularly showy, not particularly authoritarian, but just a softness to his way, and I think an inability which happens with Cancer Ascendant, an inability to hide his emotions. So when he is happy, you see it, and when he's just not, you see it on his face. So we have that Cancer Ascendant, 9 degrees, 58 minutes of Cancer. And so he was born in 1936, which means that he has Pluto in Cancer. And he does, in fact, have Pluto in the first house. Let me just grab his chart. What did I do with it? I brought it in. 1 second. I'll be right back. I think I'd be better prepared. He has it at 28 degrees of Cancer. 37 minutes in that first house. Oh, no, 17 minutes. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong one. And it is retrograde. So in the past, he has had some resistance in his past lives. Of course, Catholic Church doesn't believe in that, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe in that. This is a very spiritual man. So with his Pluto in Cancer, family is very dear to him. Tradition to a certain extent, but maybe even more so women and children, families, survival of that, you know. So in that respect, I would say children are very important to him. Now, we evolve in evolutionary astrology. We say that the soul evolves through the polarity point of Pluto. And I'm going to put the polarity point of Pluto over here. And so in order for his soul to evolve, he is being required, and I'll put it as PPP, he's being required to move into the direction of Capricorn. And Capricorn is about being an authority. And he certainly has become an authority, hasn't he? But it's in the 7th house, so it's not a power over authority. It has more to do with dialogue and a back and forth and a one-to-one. So he would be a more personal, this is a more personal one-to-one experience with this Pope than, say, if he had his polarity point up in the 10th house or something like that, or even if he had Pluto in the 10th house. Pluto in the first house is a transformation of your identity. And so he will, in his life, go through a transformation of how he defines himself and his own identity. And because we don't really know what's going on personally with the Pope, we can only sort of see it for his deeds. The first house is kind of a very personal thing, and we're not always aware of what people are going through when they have Pluto in that first house. It's not always evident. So Pluto is our unconscious desire, but the nodes of the moon show us where we've come from and where we're going evolutionarily. The south node is the ego, or the emotional self-image of the past. The north node is the ego of the future, or the emotional self-image of the future. And his south node, we always start with the south node, where we've been, is in the 12th house, in Gemini. 24 degrees of Gemini, 17, I'm sorry. Yeah, 17 minutes, I was right. And retrograde. Most of the time, the nodes are retrograde. So he has his south node in the house associated with monasteries and large institutions where you can sort of disappear into the woodwork, so to speak. And it's in Gemini. And so when I was doing his chart, I definitely got the vibe of, him being a monk and, scribing what monks did. And so there is this understanding of the word and studying of the word in a very spiritual way, the 12th house. And so then his north node ends up being in, of course, the 6th house, because I'll have to use a different one here. This one's not working. Because, of course, the North Node is always 180 degrees from the South Node, and it's always in the opposite house, and it's always in the opposite sign. So we have his North Node at 24 degrees of Sagittarius, 17 minutes retrograde. Now, the North Node in Sagittarius is about moving in the direction of what is true, right? Sagittarius is truth. Sagittarius is ethics and morality. Gemini is more of an amoral energy. It's like, these are the facts, ma'am. But it's in Sagittarius that we develop a system, a philosophy of life. And he has it in the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of service, and oftentimes the house of world service. And so he has come in to be of service, practical service, around issues of truth and issues of spirituality and issues of morals and ethics. Okay, so we can see that he has come in to perhaps uncover the truth. The 12th house is often secrets, hidden enemies, things like that. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the rulers of his nodes, because we can get an idea of his past life, and we can get an idea of his future, the future energies, the directions that he needs to move in to manifest his destiny. And all right, we're going to do that by looking at the planet Mercury. And we look at Mercury because his south node is in Gemini. But we also have to look at Neptune because we're dealing with the 12th house. And the 12th house is naturally ruled by Pisces, and the ruling planet of Pisces is Neptune. We can also look at his Jupiter because Jupiter was the classical ruler of Pisces, and it's the Pisces house. But I'm going to save Jupiter because his north node is in Sagittarius, and we can go over Jupiter at that time, but keeping in mind that he has worked that Jupiter energy as well in his past lives. So we have somebody who has Mercury in the 7th house, and it is at 11 degrees of Capricorn, 49 minutes. And so here we have this sense of structure, Capricorn. There is a sense of responsibility. So this is somebody who had to be responsible for the words, for the communication, and it's in the 7th house. So he has had experience with communicating to others in a very precise manner, in a manner that is in alignment with the traditions of the institution that he was in. Okay, so we have that. Now let's look at Neptune. We have Neptune down here in the 2nd house, and we have it at 18 degrees of Virgo, 58 minutes. When I see Neptune and Virgo together, of course, Neptune is in its fall when it's in Virgo. And so I believe it's its fall. I'm not sure if it's full or it's detriment. So astrologists out there, I apologize for not knowing that detail. But this, for me, I also see it as Virgo is about making things real, and Neptune is about making that which has no words. So there's this sense of trying to bring understanding or discernment or the words, or bring to earth the spiritual that is very difficult to find the words for. So there's a lot of energy here for, very thoughtful, pensive, trying to explain the unexplainable, I feel. And so this is a lot of his past life things, his past life dynamics. Also, it's in the second house about his values, and so he really, words are important, and getting people to understand what he's saying is important to him in the past and also in the future, because his North Node is in Virgo's house. And so any planet in Virgo is going to have some sort of influence on that house, right? Okay. Now, let's look at his North Node. His North Node is in Sagittarius. And so the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. And so we look to see where his Jupiter is. And he actually has Jupiter at 3 degrees of Capricorn, 32 minutes. Now Jupiter is a regal energy. It's the energy of the teacher. It's the energy of the expansion of our understanding, but it's in Capricorn. And so it's our expansion of our understanding around traditional things, traditional values. It's also connected with that 12th house from his past. So I believe that he not only might he have been a scribe in a monastery, but he was also probably an upper echelon person. Who perhaps went by the rules, okay, appreciated the tradition of it all, the ritual of it all. But he does have Jupiter on the side of his North Node, and it's actually conjunct his North Node. So when you have the ruler of the North Node conjunct the North Node, we know that this is somebody who's done a lot of work in previous lifetimes to bring his beliefs forward, right? Jupiter, his beliefs. In a very structured way. So this is somebody who has a very, very structured mind. And of course we have Mercury in Capricorn. Now Jupiter and Mercury are conjunct. Jupiter is in the 6th house, however, and so the 6th house is service. So here we have the planet of royalty in the sign of tradition in the house of service. And so we can see this whole Pope thing sort of being there from the very start. His relationship between Jupiter and Mercury is a new phase conjunction. And so new phase is about new things. And so in this lifetime, even though we have this tradition, he is being required to move in a new way of thinking. And that thinking has to do with the interaction between him and other people. So it's not just his idea, right? It's the interaction of ideas for him. Now, if we look at Mercury, which is the ruler of the house that we're in, we go back to Mercury here in Capricorn. So this Jupiter-Mercury new phase conjunction, which has the energy of Aries, it's an energy of the warrior. Okay, I need to look at Benedict to see how his chart lined up. I'm not sure he was a warrior. He was also a Pisces, and Pisces aren't known for being warriors. This Pope is a Sagittarius. He was actually born in December. It was actually December 17th, 1936. So he has that warrior for truth kind of energy anyway. So let's look at his sun, because we haven't looked at his sun up to this point. He actually has his sun right here on his North Node at 25 degrees of Sagittarius, 54 minutes. So that's another indication that this is a soul that's worked really hard to sort of move his energy, his identity, his philosophies forward into this lifetime, where they could manifest as service to humanity. but in a traditional way. Okay, so let's look at a couple of other things going on in his chart. I'd like to look at his moon, because the moon is actually the ruler of his chart, right? Because the moon is in Cancer. I mean, the chart is ruled by Cancer, and the moon is actually up here in the 7th house again, and this time it's in Aquarius. So this person, 12 degrees 33 minutes, so this is somebody who is emotional, right? But also Aquarius can be have objectivity, so he can hold his emotions at arm's length to a certain extent because of that moon in Aquarius, and I think that's helpful as he deals with certainly the challenges of a church besieged by its sins, the karma of the past. He has a lot of Capricorn. Capricorn is about the karma of the past and the past coming up to be rectified. And I think this is somebody who is strong enough to, it's certainly not going to be complete rectification, because we're talking about, like I said, centuries of abuse on all levels, and not just childhood, not just with children, but abuse of women and all kinds of abuses. But I think the heart and soul, if we connect the heart and soul of the church to Jesus, then I think we have a connection here with this Pope. Okay. I probably should have said this at the beginning. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school from first grade till my senior year in high school. I no longer really consider myself a Catholic. I consider myself an uncovered Catholic, as opposed to a recovered Catholic, because who wants to recover that stuff? We want to uncover it. And I've expanded past the dogmas of the Church. Probably was born that way with Uranus on my ascendant. But all the same, I'm not necessarily sympathetic to the Church. So I want to put that out there so you don't think I'm what they call an apologist for this. I'm trying to look at this from an evolutionary perspective with an open mind. So just so I want to put that out there. Okay. All right. So let's look now. One of the things that you can do in a chart is you can look at the Sun, the Moon, and Saturn, and the Ascendant to a certain extent, and get a whole idea of the chart. The Sun being your identity, who you are; the Moon being how you live, how you react and respond to life; and Saturn being the limitation, right? Saturn limits three-dimensional reality, and so we can look at Saturn, and he actually has Saturn up here in the 8th house. Okay, I left that open too long. Sorry about that. He has Saturn in the 8th house at 16 degrees of Pisces, 30 minutes. Saturn in Pisces is often a spiritual, some sort of spiritual, what's the word I'm looking for? Work with the spiritual. A lot of healers, powerful healers have Saturn in Pisces. So there's a spiritual bent to his career. And interestingly enough, it's in the 8th house. And the 8th house is the Scorpio house. And it's in Scorpio that we have these abuses of power. And so he sort of has come in. And Pisces is about forgiveness and letting go and letting God. And so to a certain extent, he came in to deal with this issue. As I said, maybe not completely, but certainly at this time. When we look at the transits to this chart, you'll see what I mean by that, because there are a lot of very profound transits at this time to his chart. The other thing that he has is he has Uranus up here in the 10th house. Now, he was born in 36, so he actually has Uranus in Taurus. Okay, it's retrograde up there. So he has not had his Uranus return. It's gotten close, but he won't have his Uranus return until next year. I believe he's 82. He's going to be 83 at the end of this year. And he'll have his Uranus return, I think, in his 83rd year. So the mere fact that he has Uranus in the 10th house tells us that there's going to be a revolution in his career and in his work, right? Or how he's seen. So on some level, he revolutionizes the institution that he represents. And because it's in Taurus, it is it can be the rising of the feminine, and this Pope does seem much more connected to his feminine energy than the popes that I've experienced in the past, except maybe for John Paul I, who seemed to be another one of these gentle souls. Of course, they offed him, right, and they put the Polish guy in charge, who didn't strike me as being particularly connected to his feminine side. So let's see, what else do I want to just put in here to round it out? His Venus, what he values, is in Aquarius. So this is a humanitarian. This is a man who humanitarian endeavors and humanitarian ideals are very important. He has Mars in the 3rd house in Libra. Having Mars in Libra is not easy. It's not an easy position for Mars. It's you have to move forward. You're always moving forward, considering all the options, and it's in his 3rd house, and it is intercepted. And so a lot of his actions, I believe, will occur behind the scenes, okay? And may seem to us as outside observers that he's not doing anything. But rest assured, this man is certainly doing things. And I guess we'll see what those things are. He's already put some things out. He's apologized in a way and taken responsibility, Capricorn, right, for what the church has wrought, and he's asking forgiveness, right? Hard thing to forgive, but again, without forgiveness, how can the church even talk about Jesus, right? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. You know, maybe they knew, I guess they knew, but let's not go there. All right, so I'll be back to do a little bit more on this chart with the transits, so we can see why now is the shit hitting the fan, quite frankly. Okay, I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back, and we're going to do the transits. And I picked the transits on the day that the grand jury in Pittsburgh came down with its report. First thing I noticed right away is that Saturn, which is the planet of karma, is right here at pretty much 3 degrees of Capricorn, conjunct Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter being the ruler of the Pope's North Node and the ruler of his Sun. We have Saturn, the planet of karma, and the planet of as you sow, so shall you reap, coming to the head of the Catholic Church. So we have Saturn. There. Venus. Let's not do that. Okay. Let's look at Saturn in his chart. We have Saturn at 16 degrees, and at that time, we have Neptune up here at 16 degrees of Pisces. And so we have Neptune conjuncting Saturn. And so Neptune on Saturn is a dissolution of the structures, and perhaps the structures of victimization, 8th house. Okay. We have Mars retrograde on the polarity point of Pluto, and it's at 30 degrees, we'll say 30 degrees of Capricorn. It is on the polarity point of Pluto, and it is opposite Pluto in the Pope's chart. And so this is a fruition. And also with Mars at the polarity point of Pluto, it is requiring the Pope to take an action. And Mars sits there for quite a while. At the time, Mars was retrograde. Today it is September 3rd, and Mars is pretty much still there, but is no longer retrograde. And so there are many people said that he didn't take an action fast enough. He was under a lot of pressure. And I'm sure to a certain extent he knew this was coming. I mean, how would you not know this is coming? And again, I believe there was a lot of activity behind the scenes. Let's see, where was the Sun at this time? The Sun was at 21 degrees of Leo in his second house. The Sun was here in his second house. Bringing up his values or illuminating his values. It's actually trine his Sun. And I think that's the main thing. Okay. Uranus is up here, of course, at 2 degrees of Taurus, close to his Uranus, but of course it is retrograde at this time, so it's moving back. But Uranus is in that 10th house, and he represents the church, so it's a change in the church. Pluto, the planet of the soul, is at 19 degrees of Capricorn, right? And it is square his natal Mars. It was actually 19 degrees 16 minutes, and his Mars is 19 degrees 31 minutes. So it is almost as exact can be. This is a first quarter crisis in action square, and so here we have the need to take an action to sort of fix the problem. Okay. And let's see what else. We have Jupiter down here in the 4th house in Scorpio, trining his Saturn. So he has a lot of spiritual help. And of course we have Jupiter in the sky. We have Jupiter trining Neptune at this time. And it is a trine of understanding and a trine where we are learning from each other. So we're learning from each other at this time. Let's see, the north node of the moon was at about 5 degrees, and that was in his first house. It's not exactly on anything. It's close to his Pluto. Eventually, the North Node will retrograde back onto his Pluto. It'll be interesting to see what happens at that time. Mercury is at 12 degrees of Leo, opposite his Moon, and so he is speaking from his emotions. He is speaking from his heart at this time. So there's a lot of things going on with this chart, and it seems to me as if this is the time for forgiveness and reconciliation to happen. And I know this looks like a big mess, and it's probably not very helpful anymore, but I wanted to sort of point those things out. Oh, there I am. To kind of give you a broader perspective on an issue that's very, very painful for a lot of people, not just because their spirituality is being challenged, but because they have had the experience themselves, whether it be from the church or not. I was watching a show, and they said 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused in childhood and 1 in 5 boys. So this is not just something that happens in the church, but something that happens in the social order that we have. And until we can understand our own sexual nature and become at peace with that, we're going to be victimizing our children. And that's part of the rise of the feminine, the feminine is the body, the feminine is the emotions, and we have to start loving and appreciating those things and understanding them, and not seeing them as sinful, but seeing them as part of being human. And the one thing I can say, I think, about this Pope is that he is very human, and I like that about him. Plus, his name is Francis, and that was my dad's name. And I love St. Francis anyway. Make me a channel of your peace, right? So we will look at the Pope's numerology and Kabbalah as well, and this will be something that maybe we continue on to see how what's going on in the world is expressed in his chart. Have yourself a great day. I hope you enjoy this. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like this video if you like it, of course. If you don't like it, don't like it, right? If you would like a reading done for yourself, I can be reached at my website, thecaesartransformation.com. And I look forward to seeing you and chatting again sometime soon. Have a great day. Bye.